My name is Bernice Langston. I'm 64 years old, and I live alone in an old brick house in Decatur, Georgia. I was a teacher for almost 30 years. Today, I am just a lady with a low voice, who speaks more with memories than with living people. But tell me something. Have you ever taken a call from someone who has already been buried? Sometimes I also wonder if I've lost my mind. Other times, I'm sure it wasn't me who went crazy. It was the world. Because I buried my only son 15 years ago. I buried it with my bare hands. Not in the literal sense, but you understand. I took care of the wake, held the photo, chose the flowers. But one night, at 3 a.m, his name appeared on the display of my cell phone. And when I answered, well, that's what I'm going to tell you. If you've ever lost someone you loved more than life itself, if you've ever wanted to hear the voice of the departed one last time, or if you simply want to know what happens when death decides to call you back, stay. Because what I experienced, it was not a dream. It was real. And it started with a phone ring. But before we dive into the heart of this story, I need you to know something. Nothing I'm going to tell you here was dreamed, invented, or exaggerated. I was completely awake when I saw that name lit up on the screen. 17-year-old in the morning. Michael. My son. The same number I kept for years, just to hear his voice in voicemail. When I answered, I heard a whisper on the other side, a voice I knew better than my own. Mom, it's dark in here. Where am I? I froze. I couldn't breathe, because that was my son's voice, the one I buried with a blue suit and a cell phone in my hands, the one who everyone said was dead, and yet he called me. He heard me, and I answered. If my heart is sharing this memory right now, it's because maybe you also know the pain of a silence that lasted for years. So, before continuing, I wanted to ask you something very simple. If this story has already touched your chest, even without me having told you everything, leave your like and subscribe here. It's not for me, it's for more people to feel that they are not alone. Because believe me, there are stories that we only have the courage to tell when we know that someone will really listen. The house was silent, as it always is after 2 a.m. I had already lost sleep hours ago, but the body gets tired, even when the head doesn't stop. She was lying there, wrapped in the old blanket Michael used on the couch when he was little. The fan made a low noise on the ceiling, and that alone filled the room. That's when the ringing of the cell phone cut through the air like a razor. Such a common sound, but at that time, at that moment, it seemed to come from another world. It took me a while to understand that it was really my phone. I took it on automatic without looking, but when I saw the screen, I froze. You name it. Michael. Clear, simple letters, saved more than a decade ago. The contact that I never had the courage to erase. I would just listen to that recording of him saying, "Hi, this is Michael. Leave the message." It was my way of keeping him close. A piece of voice in the middle of the silence. The heart began to beat differently. I felt something in my stomach. A craving that didn't come from fear, but from memory. That feeling that only a mother knows. When something calls you inside, and you know it has to do with your child, even if he is underground. My fingers trembled. I answered. Hello? On the other side, silence. But it was not a common silence. It was a silence that seemed to expect something. A space. And then came the sound. Mother. That voice. Oh my God. It was him. It was not similar. It was not imitated. It was my boy's voice. A little slower. Dragged. But with that way that only those who generated know. The way he always called me when he wanted to be held. Mother. Choked. I felt my body freeze up to my spine. My eyes burned before any tears even fell. I couldn't answer at first. Then he spoke again. Mom. It's dark in here. Where am I? That's when time stopped for me. I looked around, as if someone was playing a trick on me, as if it were a hidden camera, as if the world had been turned upside down. But only I was there. The television turned off, the armchair empty, and the phone burning in my hand. Michael, I whispered. The mouth is dry. The fingers are cold. It's me. Mom is here. But he did not answer. The line was muted. I tried to call him back. The number no longer existed. It disappeared from the screen. Disappeared. I sat in the dark, with my phone on my lap, as if holding a cross. Minutes, maybe hours. I didn't know what to think. Has anyone managed to clone that old number? Would it be some kind of hoax? But how to explain the voice? The way? The question? That morning, I didn't sleep anymore. I stood there, staring into his room through the half-open door. The bed made, the posters on the wall, everything as he left it. Everything like I could never move. And I asked myself, what if he was trying to come back? Pause. You know, sometimes we spend so much time immersed in pain that we forget what it's like to feel alive. But that night, for a moment, I felt like God had given me my son back by a thread. A very thin thread. Impossible, but real. Have you ever felt something like this? A presence, a voice, a certainty that no one else understands? If you've experienced something like this, comment below with an "I believe" or a "I've lived it," because sometimes all we need is to know that we're not going crazy alone. That night, I promised myself I wasn't going to let it go like a daydream. I was going to understand what had happened, even if it was the last thing I did in this life. But I didn't know that this was just the beginning, because 2 days later, the phone rang again. And this time, he said something that made me run out of the house in the middle of the night. When the phone rang for the second time, I was already awake. Since that early morning, sleeping has become a luxury that my heart could no longer afford. The call came at the same time, 3:14 a.m., and once again, the name Michael flashed on the screen. I answered the second ring, without breathing. Mom. The voice was now clearer, more present. But what he said next took me off my feet. It's dark, Mom. It smells like wood in here. And it's cold. My whole body trembled. Cold. Wood. Dark. At that moment, a memory pierced me like a knife. The coffin. My Michael was buried with his cell phone in his hands. It was his request, 3 days before the accident. At the time, I thought it was strange. He said, "If something happens to me, I want to go with my phone." He was 17 years old. I thought it was a modern teenager's mania, but I ended up complying. And now, his voice told me that was inside. I knew what I had to do. I took the coat, the keys, and went. Driving in the dark of that hour seemed like a bad dream. The streets of Decatur were empty, and every flashing traffic light gave me the feeling that time was suspended. As I parked in front of the gates of Forest Lawn Memorial Park, I felt a shiver run down my spine. It was not fear. It was something deeper. It was as if someone already knew that I was going to go back there. I walked slowly to the side entrance where I knew Mr. Charles was patrolling. He had known me for years. You've seen me arrive with flowers on birthdays, Mother's Day, Christmas, always in silence. When I knocked on the door, he took a long time to recognize it. But it was enough for me to say Michael, for him to open the gate without asking anything else. "Do you want to see the grave now?" he asked. I nodded. His flashlight illuminated the pebble floor, and every step echoed in my soul. The night was dense, without wind, and even with the city's lighthouses in the distance, there was a darkness that was not only physical. We arrived at the tomb. Nothing seemed out of place. The dried flowers from last Sunday were still there, the cast-iron cross, intact. The marble named after him reflected the beam of the lantern. "Do you need help praying?" Mr. Charles whispered gently. "That's not what I came to do today," I replied. I knelt before the tombstone. I closed my eyes and let the palm of my hand touch the floor. "Michael, is it really you, my son?" I asked, almost soundlessly. Suddenly the air changed. I don't know how to explain it. It was not a breeze, nor noise. It was a change in the weight of silence, as if the whole place had held its breath. I looked around. Nothing. But my instinct said, there was someone there with me. It was not Mr. Charles, who was already respectfully walking away. He was a presence, and it wasn't Michael's. I am not a woman of delusions. I have lived too much in this life to let myself be carried away by any superstition. But there, on that piece of land, in front of my son's name, I felt it. I felt that something was watching me, and it wasn't with affection. The cell phone in my bag vibrated. A glimmer of hope came over me. But when I looked, the screen was black. No connection. No notification. Only heat. The device was hot, as if it had been used. And I knew, with the certainty that only a mother's heart knows, Michael was trying to tell me something. Something urgent. But there was someone else listening. Someone who shouldn't be there. And it was at that moment, with my knee stuck in the ground and my chest on fire, that I asked myself, what if it wasn't just him trying to come back? What if I had opened a door? or anyone else. I returned home without feeling my legs. The head throbbed, and the chest, that I can't even describe. It was as if it was too full of something that didn't fit. Fear, hope, longing, a mixture that only those who have come face to face with the impossible understand. I dropped the bag on the armchair and went straight to Michael's room. The door was the same way, ajar, creaking slightly as I pushed with my hand. The air inside smelled of standing still. It wasn't mold. It wasn't dust. It was absence. It was silence piled up. The navy blue bedspread folded to perfection, the bookshelf with the books he loved. The denim jacket hung from the chair, as if he had just left. I sat on the edge of the bed and let my eyes run all over the space, as if looking for a shadow, a sign, anything. And then I noticed a wooden box under the desk. It was small, old, with a crack on the side. I knew what it was. The diary, that notebook that he always kept close, but that he never let me read. My thing, Mom. No big deal. And I respected it. Even after he left, I respected him. 17 years of life fitting in a few pages that I never had the courage to open. Until that night. I took the box, sat on the floor with my legs crossed as I did when he was little and read to me, and finally opened it. The smell of old paper mixed with the faint perfume of the room made me close my eyes. For a moment, I saw him, smiling. Mom, pay attention, this is deep. That's what he said when he wanted me to read something he thought was too smart for the world to understand. The front pages were innocent. Playlists, thoughts about movies, class notes. But as I progressed, the writing changed. It became denser, more intimate. He described dreams, several, and they always had the same pattern. He on top of the motorcycle. A curve, a flash. It's a dark with an earthy smell. In one of the entries he wrote, I dreamed again. I don't feel pain, just a weight, as if I were under something. And my mother calls for me, but I can't answer. My fingers trembled. I read slowly, feeling each word as if he whispered them in my ear. Later on, another excerpt. If I die, I know I'll come back. Somehow I'll find a way. I promised her that I would never really leave, and I never break promises. I closed the journal with my hands to my chest. It was him. He knew. Somehow he sensed it. And more than that, he prepared himself, as if his soul already knew that his story with life was not going to end there on that road. Michael has always been different. Since he was little, he was very sensitive. When other children played video games, he spent hours listening to music, drawing, writing sentences that seemed too big for his age. He once asked me, Mom, do you believe that some people are born knowing that they won't stay here for long? At the time, I thought it was thoughtful teen drama. Today, I don't know anymore. Every memory of him now came back with another light, as if it had all been a kind of warning, a countdown that only now made sense. I got up from the ground with teary eyes. I went to the bookshelf, took one of his photos, the one where he has his high school diploma, smiling with his eyes closed, and sat with it on my lap. If you're trying to come back, my son, I'll help you, even if it's the last thing I do. But while I was making this promise, something bothered me. What if he wasn't alone in that place? What if in trying to find his way back, he had awakened something that should never have been touched, something that was also listening to our conversations? 2 days after that night in the cemetery, I no longer knew what was wakefulness and what was sleep. He walked around the house like a lost soul, waiting for that touch to come back. I found myself talking to myself, calling out to him loudly, asking him to speak again, not to leave me in the dark. And it was precisely in the deepest darkness, at 3:14 a.m., that the phone rang again. I was in the kitchen, with the lights off, sitting in the rocking chair. The sound vibrated straight in his chest. I picked up the phone shaking. There it was again. Michael. I answered without thinking, as if holding a thread of life. Hello, my son. It's me. I'm here. On the other side, his breathing. Firmer, stronger. And then he spoke. Mom, I'm in a dark place. There's wood all around me. Musty smell. And it seems that time does not pass here. My soul left the body. I knew that smell. I knew what he was describing. Michael, are you in the coffin, son? My voice came out as a whisper of despair. He paused. There's something about me, Mom. As if my body didn't age. Like I'm stopped. I didn't know whether to cry, scream, pray. Everything inside me shorted out. Do you feel pain? Are you in jail? Silence. Then, his voice, weaker. I hear things. I hear you talking to me, and there is other voices. Weak, some cry, other whisper. It began to fail. Cracks, squeaks. I was screaming, Michael? Michael, stay with me. But I only heard one more sentence. Don't let them shut me up. And the call dropped. I called him back, once, twice, 10 times. Nothing. The number disappeared. It evaporated from the roll call, as if it had never existed. And it was at that moment, with a cell phone in hand and a broken heart, that the penny dropped. That was no longer a delirium of my longing. It wasn't just a memory playing with my head. It was real. The supernatural now had weight, smelled, had a voice. I needed to act. I needed to understand. He was alive in some way, or maybe between worlds, but trying to reach me. And me? I was the only one who could hear it. And if you've come this far with me, if you're still listening to me, my heart thanks you. I'm here opening my chest, telling a story that even I don't know if the world will believe. So, if you can, leave a like on this video, subscribe here to the channel. It's not just for me, it's for all the mothers waiting for an answer, for all the voices that are still trying to be heard. Because what's next? No one is prepared to listen. Because when he called me the third time, he was no longer alone. After that second call, I stood in the kitchen for a few minutes, staring at nothing, with the phone still hot in my hand. Reality had become something else. I could no longer pretend that it was just nostalgia or hallucination. My son was trying to come back, trying to tell me something. And now there was them. Who would these they be? Voices, presences. It wasn't just him in the dark. Fear began to turn to despair. I needed help. And that's when something inside me pointed to a person I never thought I'd have the courage to call again. David, Michael's father, my ex-husband. We separated a year after our boy's death. Grief tore us inside, but each one reacted in a different way. He wanted to forget, to move on, to rebuild his life. Not me. I stayed. I stayed in the same house, on the same street, with the same objects, the same smell, the same emptiness. It was 12 years without exchanging a word. And yet, that night, my fingers dialed his number as if they knew the way. He answered on the third attempt. His voice was hoarser, aged. "Bernice?" he said, surprised. "Did something happen?" I couldn't answer right away. I could only say, "David, Michael, he's calling me." The silence that came after was not one of doubt. It was a fright, of fear. He took a deep breath. "What are you talking about, Bernice?" "Dream." "No." He called me. Twice. I recorded the second one. "I need you to come." Now! Now! An hour later, he was at the door. The same face, more tired. The eyes, still the same. He looked at the room, looked at me, but didn't say anything. I handed over the cell phone. He listened to the recording. Michael's voice, the pauses, the mom. "It's dark here." I saw his face turn pale. His hand squeezed the arm of the armchair. "My God," he murmured. "It's him. It's his voice." I nodded. And for the first time in 12 years, we cried together, in silence, sitting side by side, like two broken pieces of the same life. He stayed there for hours. We remember everything. The burial at Forest Lawn, the Navy suit, the cell phone that Michael asked to take with him. "Do you remember that?" I asked. I remember. I thought it was silly at the time. But he insisted. He said he needed to keep the phone. Do you think that... Did he know? Maybe, or maybe I just felt it. David looked at me with a strange twinkle in his eyes. "We need to see this body." I thought about it, but exhuming is not simple. There is a law. There is a process. It's going to take days. He may not have days, David. We were silent. The dawn was progressing, and I realized, even with everything we've been through, even with everything we've lost, we were still his parents. We still had that in common. And now, perhaps, a second chance. But what we didn't know, it's just that someone was already waiting for this reunion, and that someone was not our son. The next day, David returned early. He had that expression that I knew well. When he decided to do something, no one made him change his mind. We sat at the kitchen table, with papers, notes, and a single certainty between the two of us. Our son was asking for help, and there was no time to wait for the world to understand. David said he was going to look for Alan McRae, a friend of his from his youth who was now the county's coroner. If anyone can speed up the exhumation process, it's him, he said. But he'll think we've gone crazy, I countered. David sighed. Maybe we really do, but that doesn't change what we hear. He left with steady eyes and the past weighing on his shoulders. Meanwhile, I started to do my part. I took my cell phone, organized the audios, saved them in more than one place. I made detailed notes, times, phrases, sensations. I needed to keep that line alive between the inexplicable and the concrete. On the same day, I called the church. Pastor Wallace had known me for years. I told part of the story, carefully in my words. He listened in silence, then said, "Bernice, there are things that only faith can achieve. But beware. Not everything that speaks with our voice comes from the light." I thanked him, but I was not satisfied. At the end of the afternoon, I got in touch with a woman who has always been talked about here in the region, Mrs. Camille, an intuitive medium, one of those who say they feel things. She came to my house, looked at each room in silence. When he arrived at Michael's room, he stopped at the door. "There's something here, but it's not just him." I shivered from head to toe. "Can you hear it?" I asked. "It's like he's under arrest, but someone is listening along." I ran out of breath. The same feeling as in the cemetery. The same impression that, when trying to listen to my son, I opened a door, and someone else passed. Camille left me a necklace with a dark stone in the center. If the stone heats up, it is a sign that the presence is near, and that's not always good. It all moved me, but it didn't take me out of focus. I wanted Michael back, and he would do whatever it took. Later, David returned. I had spoken to Alan. He thought the story was absurd, of course, but when he heard the audio, paled. He said he had never heard anything like it, and that he will try to help us with the papers. But he asked for time. Time, I repeated. It's everything we don't have. We sat on the couch in silence. I looked at nothing and thought, how to explain to the world that something is alive when everything around insists on calling it madness? How to convince logic that a mother's heart knows what it has heard? And if you've come this far with me, I tell you with an open heart, don't give up now, because what comes next? It's what changed everything, which made us see that the impossible doesn't knock on the door. It goes through the wall. That same night, the cell phone rang for the third time. But what I heard, it wasn't just my son's voice. It was something else, and she called my name. On the third night, I was already expecting. I sat in the armchair by the window, with my cell phone on my lap and my heart pounding. The streetlight barely entered through the thin curtain, and the clock struck 3:12 a.m. When the screen lit up again, "Michael," I answered so fast that I almost dropped the phone. "Mom," his voice came firm, clean, as if he were very close. I could almost see him, with that hair falling in his eyes, and the voice of someone who always called me when he forgot his coat before leaving. "It's me, son. I'm here," I replied. "I know. I can see now. Some things. The house. The room. You. The father. He came back, right?" I widened my eyes. "Yes, Michael. How do you know?" "I saw it. He sat on the couch yesterday. Cried. You tried to hide it, but I saw it." My eyes filled right away. He was really watching. Even separated by a world that I could not name, he was there. "Are you close?" I asked. The answer came loaded with something that was not just sadness. "There are more people here, Mom. Other. Some are like me. Lost. Looking for a way to come back. But not all of them are good." His voice dropped, as if he was hiding the speech of someone around. "There's one of them, who whispers bad things. He stays close, and I feel like he doesn't want you to find me." A chill went up my spine. I looked around, as if something might be listening to me too. "Michael, are you safe?" Silence. Then a whisper. "Not for long." I felt the stone on the necklace that Camille gave me warm against my chest. It was real. There was something there. "What does he want, son?" The call began to fail. Hissing, noises. And then he said urgently, "He wants to use the door you opened." The call dropped. The cell phone turned black, and the stone in the necklace got so hot that I had to take it off. My body trembled, but it was more than fear. It was a mixture of love and dread, of wanting to protect my son at any cost, and not knowing where the danger came from. I sat on the floor, with my back to the wall, and cried. But it wasn't just sadness. It was impotence. It was anger. It was that kind of pain that only those who love a child more than themselves can understand. And I'm sorry to open this here with so much truth, but if you've ever felt like you needed to protect someone, even from the impossible, comment here so I know you understand me. He writes, "I know how it is," or "I understand you," because sometimes what saves us the most is to discover that someone, somewhere, also feels what we feel. That morning, something inside me changed. I was no longer just trying to save my son. I was facing a presence that wanted more than silence. He wanted passage, and I could have left the door open by accident. What if that door could no longer be closed on its own? I spent the whole day with the feeling that I had sand in my chest, as if every breath scraped inside. After that last call from Michael, my hands were cold and my head dizzy, trying to understand how such a short warning could carry such a big weight. "The window is closing." Those were his words. And before I could ask anything else, the phone died in my hands, as if someone had torn off the wire that connected my boy to this world. Since then, he has not called. He did not send a message. It did not appear on the screen. Nothing. The silence after those dawns full of impossibles seemed even more cruel. I crawled around the house like a ghost, trying to make coffee and spilling the water, trying to sit up and getting up right away, pacing back and forth, stopping at his bedroom door without the courage to enter. It was as if the whole world had become too small for my despair. In the middle of the afternoon, Dr. McCrae sent a short message. "Bernice, the authorization comes out only next week." I read and reread it, as if I could make the words change by themselves. Next week, when I needed her today. Now, before that window, whatever it was, closed forever. I felt my legs fail. I dropped the phone on the carpet and went after it like an old woman folding in half. And it was there, on my knees, with my face buried in the old blanket in the hallway, that I finally cried like I hadn't cried since the funeral. Not that contained crying, of those who try to be strong, but the one that comes from the guts, that makes us salivate, sob, lose our breath. That cry that we only see a mother doing when she finds out she has lost her child, because I had lost mine twice, and now it was missing a third. When I managed to get up, my hands were shaking so much that I had to lean on the wall. I went to his room and opened the door slowly, as if time could hurt me by touching that still air. The smell was the same. A little bit of dust, a little bit of wood, a little bit of it. The bed made with the same navy blue duvet, the skateboard leaning against it, the favorite jacket hanging from the chair. I ran my hand over the pillow, crumpling unintentionally. He slept here. He grew up here. He dreamed, laughed, fought with me, apologized here. And I let the world take him away from me. I sat on the floor, leaning against the bed, and I kept remembering the Christmases when he woke up too early, shaking me by the hand. The 9th birthday when he cried because he thought I had forgotten, and in fact I had hidden everything to surprise him. The day he came home saying that he had fallen in love for the first time and asked me if it would pass. And the last hug, the one I didn't know was the last. All the time I repeated the same questions in my head. Why me? Why him? Why now? But there was no answer. I was alone in that house that seemed too big for a single life, too small for so much pain. And it's a strange thing, when the silence becomes so heavy that we even hear our own heart beating out of rhythm. I reached out to the table where his old cell phone was, the one I kept even though I was turned off, just to remember the texture, the weight. I touched the cold device. I thought of his request, days before he died, to be buried with his phone. At the time, I laughed. "Michael, that's nonsense." Today, I would do anything to understand what he already knew. Night fell slowly. I remained in the room without turning on the light. The dark seemed less scary to me than the idea of being away from that place. And as the clock struck 1 a.m., then 2 a.m., then 2:40 a.m., a certainty began to settle in my chest. I was running out of time. It was like a bell ringing closer and closer. Warning, warning, warning. I need to say this because if someone on the other side has ever felt that time was running against you, maybe they understand what I experienced that morning. I knew that if I didn't do something, I was going to lose my son forever. Not to death, but to somewhere much worse. The house was so quiet that I could hear my own footsteps on the carpet. I went to the living room, took my bag, the keys, and sat on the couch with everything on my lap. I would go to the cemetery, authorization or not, consequence or not, prison or not. No law written by human hands was going to stop a mother from trying to save her own child. And it was when I held my breath, holding the keys tightly, that I heard something in the distance. A small but impossible sound. Michael's cell phone vibrating, inside his room, after hours of absolute silence. I froze with my finger still stuck in the ring of the keychain, because it wasn't my phone, it was his. And worst of all, I knew the device had been dead for 15 years. So who, or what, was calling now? I stood there, standing at the door of the room, my heart beating as if I was going to run away from my chest. The sound had been clear, a faint hum, a continuous vibration. It came from Michael's desk, right where his old cell phone had always been. I approached with sweating hands. Each step felt heavier than the last. When I touched the drawer, I almost hoped that it was empty, that it had all been imagination. But it wasn't. The device was there, just as it was on the day of the burial, cracked on the side, with the sticker of a band he loved, and vibrating. The screen turned off. No sign of life, no light, nothing. But the sound was there, vibrating as if something inside him still calls to me. I picked up the phone with shaky hands, but before I could react, the noise stopped. Again, silence, but this time he seemed to have another weight, as if some presence there was waiting for my decision. I didn't wait any longer. I called David. We have to do it tonight, not tomorrow, not later, today. He hesitated. Do you know what that means? If we don't do it, Michael will disappear, and I'm not going to let that happen. He was silent for a few seconds. Then he replied, I'll be there in half an hour. I stuffed the old cell phone in my bag as if it were a sacred artifact. Something told me that he still had a bigger role in this story. When David arrived, it was already past 10 at night. We drove to the cemetery without saying a word. The wind made the branches of the trees hit the glass like thin fingers. When we arrived, Mr. Charles was already waiting for us inside, with an expression of someone who knew he was about to cross a line of no return. I'm too old for this, but I've never seen a mother's pain lie. He handed us shovels, flashlights, and gloves. The earth is heavy. It's been a while, but I show you where it is. We went through the tombs with the lanterns lit. The light danced on the cold stones, and the engraved names seemed to watch us. When we stopped in front of Michael's tombstone, my legs almost failed. David started digging first, then Charles. Finally, me. Each shovel of earth taken was as if I were digging not only the ground, but the last 15 years of my life. The earth was compacted, hard, moist, and the smell. The smell was only of wet earth and wood, no sign of decomposition, of death, of time. We dug for hours. The sweat flowed, the breath was heavy, but no one stopped. Until we heard the dull sound of the shovel hitting wood. David knelt down, wiped the corners with his hands. There it was, the coffin, closed, flawless. Mr. Charles looked at me. Are you sure? I nodded, and together we lift the lid. What we saw took my breath away. Michael, entire, young, just like on the day of the wake. The same blue suit, the same brown hair, pale but intact skin. The eyelashes are still there, his mouth slightly ajar as if he were sleeping. There was no smell of rot, only wood, damp earth, and a cold that did not come from the climate. It came from inside us. I approached, knelt on the edge of the coffin and touched my fingers to his hand. It was cold, but not hard, not rigid as death demands. My God, I whispered. David fell to his knees beside him in silence, and Mr. Charles retreated a few steps, making the sign of the cross. The reality there no longer made sense. Time no longer made sense. My son was there, prisoner, as if it had never left, and at that moment, between tears and amazement, I understood. He was really waiting, and maybe there was still time to bring him back. If this piece of my life can become a mirror or a hug for someone, will it help me to carry it forward? Like and subscribe here to the channel. It makes more difference than you think, because what happened right after? It was something that not even in a nightmare could I have foreseen. Michael's body moved. The moment the body moved, I thought my heart was going to stop. It wasn't a sudden movement. It wasn't a convulsion. It was like a restrained sigh, a slight twitching of the fingers. I recoiled in fright, bringing my hand to my mouth, but I couldn't look away, and that's when I realized. Between my son's crossed hands, the old blue cell phone rested, the one he insisted so much on taking to the grave. The screen, which should have been off and without battery for 15 years, now glowed. A bluish, pulsating light escaped through the cracks in his fingers. It was as if the device was breathing. I approached slowly, knees failing. David saw it too. "My God," he murmured. "It's on." I reached out and very carefully touched the screen. She reacted to my touch, as if she was recognizing me. The message that appeared was clear, simple, impossible. "Take me home." I blinked, trying to understand. The light pulsed again. Another message emerged. "I have little time." I felt a lump in my throat that not even the air could cross. That was not a dream, nor an illusion. It was a request. It was my son, caught between worlds, asking to come back. I looked at David. He understood without needing a word. We took the body very carefully. I wrapped Michael in a thick blanket, as I did when he came home from school with a fever. His weight was the same as when I hugged him for the last time. Neither lighter, not more rigid. He seemed to be asleep, but it was a sleep of those who are struggling to wake up. We carried the body to the car in silence. Mr. Charles stood in the cemetery, saying nothing, his face covered with astonishment and guilt. When we got into the car, I put Michael lying in the back seat. The blue cell phone stayed with him, beating like a heart. At every turn, at every traffic light, I felt that something invisible was following us, as if we had broken a rule that we shouldn't. But inside me, there was only one certainty. He needed to return home. In the middle of the journey, David looked in the rearview mirror and asked quietly, "What if he wakes up?" I replied with tears in my eyes, "Then I'll be there, where I should have been all along. And, look, if you're still here listening to me tell all this, from the bottom of my heart, I want you to stay with me. Because, as impossible as it all seems, the most memorable moment is yet to come. There are things that we only understand when silence begins to speak." And what did that silence reveal to me? When we got home, everything changed. Because as soon as we crossed the door of the room, the blue light of the cell phone shone brighter, and Michael opened his eyes. The scene of those eyelids slowly opening will accompany me until the last day of my life. It wasn't a scare. It wasn't fast. It was like the blooming of a flower after a winter too long. Michael blinked twice, slowly, as if the light was hurting. But there was a glow there, a spark. "Son," I whispered, kneeling by the bed. He did not answer. He just left his eyelids half open, breathing very lightly, so light that I almost doubted it. David ran to the door of the room. "He's alive?" I didn't know how to answer, but the blue cell phone, still lit in our boy's hands, vibrated once again. 3 words appeared on the screen. Simple, direct, water, light, music. It was not the time to question. It was time to act. I went to the kitchen, got a glass of filtered water, ran back. With a clean cloth, I wet his lips slowly, as I did when he was little and caught high fevers. Then I went to the bedroom window, the one I kept closed at all times for fear that the dust would erase his smells, and opened the curtains at once. The morning light invaded the room like an embrace, kissing his pale face with a warmth that seemed more than sunshine. David went to the bookshelf and picked up an old CD, Jazz, a track that Michael loved when he was a teenager, especially on the days when his father played it during dinner. Strange Fruit doesn't... This was too sad. We chose Autumn Leaves, instrumental, soft, like a conversation between 2 hearts. The sound filled the room, and there, standing, holding my breath, I saw his skin begin to change, a slight color rising up her cheeks. The fingers moved, almost nothing, a minimal spasm, but enough for me to know he was coming back. It was like taking care of a newborn again. I approached and stroked his hair, feeling the softness that time did not take. I kissed his forehead, warm as a warm breeze, and in that moment, I realized something powerful. I was getting the chance that so many mothers beg for, to care again, to take another sip of water, another ray of light, another familiar sound. I stopped for a moment, doing nothing, just looking at him, and I thought about how some memories are like tattoos inside us. They don't fade, they do not weaken, they do not disappear. We only learn to live with the pain or longing they carry. And if you, who are listening to me now, have a memory that doesn't come out of your chest, good or painful, comment below. Share with me. It says, I remember that, or I've felt it. Because sometimes talking about a memory makes it breathe again too. And that morning, between the filtered light, the sweet music, and the sound of water being slowly sipped by those motionless lips, I knew. The house was different. It was no longer just mine. It was his again. The air seemed to vibrate. The portraits on the shelf seemed to smile. And I felt that I was about to discover something greater than everything I had experienced so far. Because when I went to get the cell phone that rested on his chest, a new message appeared. Now get ready. He's going to talk. The blue screen pulsed like a beacon inside that room. I trembled as I held my phone, but not out of fear. It was a bow. The message still shone. Now get ready. He's going to talk. I took a deep breath, looked at Michael, still motionless on the bed, but with my eyes half open, and then the device vibrated in my hands. A new phrase emerged. Mom, I see you. His legs weakened. I sat on the floor, unable to contain my tears. He was there. He saw it. Felt. You look beautiful in this gray blouse. And Dad still wears that old leather watch. I put my hand to my chest. The gray blouse. I didn't even remember wearing it. David looked at me, then at the watch on his wrist. He didn't say anything. He didn't need to. Another message appeared. I hear you. From the cemetery. From before. My heart tightened again. I touched his hand. Hot now. Michael, where are you, my son? And then he came. Close, but arrested. Arrested how? Arrested where? The response took longer. Almost a minute of waiting, which seemed like a lifetime. And then, a space in between, where time does not pass and everything echoes. I was only able to come back because you listened. My tears fell silent, and I whispered, even though I knew he didn't need the sound anymore. I'll always hear from you. David came closer, putting his hand on my shoulder. He was still trying to find logic, but I could see in his eyes that he had already given up on denying it. What we saw, what we read, it was greater than any explanation. Michael continued. Others try. They try very hard. But I got it first. There's still time. I looked around. The air seemed denser. The morning light had already turned into a golden evening, and the shadows in the room had shifted. Others? I wrote. Yes, prisoners like me. But not everyone wants to go home. A shiver ran down my spine. The feeling of being watched, which had accompanied me since the cemetery, came back stronger. I looked at the window, but everything was normal. Everything is the same. The next message appeared slowly, as if each word was heavy. They feel it when the door opens. They feel it when someone listens. And now, you know that you listen. I wanted to turn off my cell phone, to return everything to the coffin, to close the room, to run, but I didn't. Because there, lying, with his fingers still moving in small tremors and his skin regaining color, was my boy, and he had returned. He wrote again, "Don't close the door. I still need to get through it in one piece." I put my hands to my face, trying to figure out how to act. It was a miracle, but also a warning. The atmosphere of the house had changed. It wasn't just joy. It was tension. It was as if something knew what we were doing, and he was waiting for the right moment to act. But still, I would choose 1,000 times to go through it all again just to read the next message that appeared. "You saved me, Mom." The words took me apart. I laid my face on the edge of the bed, holding his hand tightly, and said out loud, "You've never been alone. Never." But inside me, even in that burst of love, a question began to form, one that I couldn't shut up. If he managed to come back, what else has managed to come along with it? That night, the sky was clear, but inside the house, there was a weight in the air that did not come from the clouds. I refused to sleep. I sat in the armchair in Michael's room, watching his every breath, every slight twitch of his fingers, every sign that he was still here. The blue cell phone was still in his hand, but it no longer vibrated. It only shone, with a low, continuous light, as if it were at rest. When the hand passed 3 in the morning, the screen lit up again, and the words that appeared chilled me inside. "They want to leave too." My body stiffened. I typed, "Who are they?" The answer came in parts, as if the connection between the worlds was slower, or as if he was trying to find the right words. Consciences. Souls, fragments, people who didn't finish. Some good ones, other, broken, lost. I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. Did they pass with you? The response took time, and when it came, I wished I hadn't asked. One of them followed the trail, the shadow. She feels what you feel. Pain, blame, repentance. I looked at the bedroom mirror. For a moment, I thought I saw something behind my reflection. A dark, low, motionless figure. Blinked. Disappeared. The cell phone vibrated again. She woke up when you called me. I stood there, still, without blinking, and suddenly from downstairs, I heard a dry noise, as if a chair had been dragged hard. David, who was sleeping in the guest room, ran upstairs. Did you hear that? I nodded, muted. He went to the hallway and looked, but there was nothing out of place. Still, the air looked different, dense, cold. The night continued with small signs. The closet door creaked by itself. An old portrait fell from the shelf. The candle I had left burning trembled as if someone was blowing out from close by. And in the middle of it all, Michael didn't move. He seemed to be sleeping, but with a furrowed brow, as if fighting against something even unconscious. When morning came, I thought everything would dissipate with the sun, but the presence was. It was like a continuous whisper inside the house, a feeling that something was just waiting for the right moment to reveal itself. Michael sent another message, short, painful. She wants you, Mom. I didn't understand. Why? And he replied, you are the guilt she feels. And that's when I understood. When I opened the door for my son to come back, maybe I let something else in, something that feeds on the wounds that we hide. But is there still time to close this door? Or what came in? Are you already too much in to leave? On the morning of the third day, the sun came in through the bedroom window in a different way. It wasn't just light. It was heat with purpose, as if heaven itself was telling us that that moment needed to happen there, at that time. I hadn't slept for 2 whole nights. Sitting on the edge of the bed, with my hand resting on my son's, I felt time slipping like sand between my fingers. David entered the room slowly, with 2 cups of coffee. But before he said anything, Michael's hand moved. It was light, almost imperceptible, but I saw it. And this time it wasn't spasm. It was movement with intention. I called David, who left the cups on the dresser and knelt next to me. He moved, I whispered. And as if my whisper had been a key, Michael opened his eyes. They were no longer the eyes of a 17-year-old boy. No, those eyes had the weight and calm of someone who saw more than he should. They were the eyes of a man who carried the time of 15 years in the blink of a year. I did it, he said. The voice came out hoarse, low, but live. It pierced my chest like silent thunder. I wanted to scream, cry, laugh, fall to my knees. But all I could do was put my forehead against his and whisper back, "You're back, my love. You're back." His heartbeat was there, weak but rhythmic. The body, previously immobile, now breathed softly. The skin was warmer, the muscles firmer. It was as if time was finally catching up with him, as if each cell were waking up in sync. Michael looked around, confused but present. "How long?" he asked. 15 years, I replied, my voice cracking. He nodded, as if he already knew. "There. Time is not like here there. There is all silence, echo, empty. But I followed your voice, Mom." I closed my eyes, squeezing his hand tightly. The weight of guilt, absence, longing, everything began to flow down the floor, as if that presence, now whole, was draining the shadows of the house. And suddenly, I realized, the feeling of darkness that had been coming in the last few days, it was gone. The presence that surrounded us, the shadow, it was no longer there. Michael took a deep breath. She tried to come with me, but he couldn't get across. David, still incredulous, held his son's face in his hands and cried like I've never seen. "You're real. My God, you're here." I still don't know how to explain, nor do I intend to. There are things that we live and keep, but maybe by telling, we help another heart to breathe. Enjoy this video and subscribe, and let's make this story reach those who need it. Because if love can cross death, maybe hope can too. But before relief could take hold of us entirely, Michael frowned. "Mom? Father?" She didn't leave. She was, but somewhere else. And then he looked straight at me, with a seriousness that pierced me like a knife. "She knows your name." He sat on the bed with effort. as if carrying more than his own weight. Still pale, but lucid. His eyes fixed on me and his father, as if he didn't want to miss anything around him, or as if he still didn't believe we were really there. "You need to know what's on the other side," he said, with a calm that wasn't his. She was older, wiser, as if that voice had lived lives before this one. David pulled up a chair and sat down slowly. I remained standing, afraid to move away, as if the slightest movement could break the spell. "It's like a place between places. You know," he continued. "It's not heaven. It's not hell. It's not even a dream. It's like getting stuck in a thought that never ends." Those words kept swirling inside me. He looked down at his own hands, which trembled slightly, and sighed as if carrying a secret. "There, everything you feel repeats itself. Everything you hide appears. And if you died in pain, with guilt, with something unsaid, it becomes the ground you walk on." I closed my eyes and swallowed. I thought about the silences we had, the hugs I didn't give, the times I wanted to say, "Forgive me," and didn't say it. And then he looked at me. "But I was able to come back because I was loved. Because your love, Mother, was like a rope. And every time you cried in that room or talked to me on the porch, it was as if this rope pulled me a little more." That's when I broke down. I knelt on the carpet next to the bed and leaned my head against his legs. "My son, I have never stopped calling you, not even for a day." He put his hand on my hair, as I did with him when I was little, and said, "I know. Michael said that in the place where he was, souls do not have a voice, but they have memory. And what a memory there is like meat. It grows, it weighs, it molds. I've seen people imprisoned for centuries, Mom. People who died feeling angry, people who did not forgive themselves, people who don't even know they died. And they keep walking, repeating the last few minutes, as if they were stuck on tape." David ran his hand over his face, trying to understand. "And that shadow—" Michael got serious. "She's different. She was not human, not the way we know it. It was born from the pain of many, like a mold that grows where no one cleans. And she wants to cross. She wants to be born on this side." I was silent for a while, just listening to his breathing, still fragile but real. "And why does she want to—" "Here," he replied without hesitation. "Because here there is still hope. There she can't feed herself. Here, it feeds on what we hide, what we pretend to have forgotten." Those words made me shiver from head to toe. Because if there's one thing I've learned throughout my life, it's just that there are a lot of people alive on the outside, but carrying a death on the inside. And if you're still here with me, listening to this, listen with the heart. Because what my son told me that morning, it wasn't just for me. It's as if he had come back to warn us all, that there is a kind of silence that sickens the soul, and that only true love can break. He looked out the window, as if he felt time passing in a different way. I woke up with 32 years in my body, but with centuries of memories inside, he said, touching his own head. "And I know there's still more to be said, Mom, because not everything came back with me. Some memories stayed there, and they are trying to go back another way." I approached, holding his hands. "What do we need to do?" He took a deep breath, as if preparing to say something big, and then he whispered, "I need to go back there, once again, alone." Michael was standing in the living room, motionless, as if he was taking in every shadow that still hovered in the corners of the house. He looked at David and me with serious eyes and said, "The portal is still open. If we don't do it now, the shadow can get through." My heart raced. Until that moment, I thought the worst was over. But there, in the heavy silence of the morning, I realized that we were still in the eye of the storm. He explained, with a calm that gave me goosebumps, that we needed to follow a ritual, simple but precise, burn objects that carried the pain of the past, purify each room with water and salt, play the music he loved the most, and open all the windows for the light to enter. We begin with the burning of memories, yellowed photographs, old letters, broken toys. The smell of burning wood mingled with silent tears. Each snap felt like a countdown. Then we spread salt on the windows and doors, a continuous line that was supposed to keep the gloomy presence at bay. The music began to play, soft at first, but growing, filling the space, vibrating on the walls and in our bones. Michael was in the center, still with his phone pulsing in his hand, guiding us. Suddenly, the house shook. A metallic sound echoed off the switches, and the phone burst into static. The heat of the fire and the intense morning light mixed, almost blinding us. I looked at Michael, who was holding my hand and David's, and said in a trembling voice, "Are we succeeding, son?" He nodded, not letting go of his hands, his eyes shining with a determination that seemed to cross worlds. The tremor gradually subsided, the crackling ceased, and silence took over. It seemed like an absolute silence, heavy but peaceful. Every breath we took felt as if it were the first after a storm. The sunlight came through every window, illuminating the room, the living room, every corner that had previously seemed too dark. Michael stepped forward, closed his eyes, and took a deep breath. The portal is sealed. The shadow can no longer cross. For now it's safe. I was still shaking, but a deep relief came over my body, a feeling that home, life, and my son were finally at peace. I looked at him, now fully human, back into the world that had always been ours, and whispered, "You did it, my boy. You're really back." But deep down I knew that experience had changed us forever. I asked myself, and the silence of the house, how to explain to those who have never been through this that the impossible can, in fact, happen. And did what started with a call at 3 a.m. really end? Or did it just open up a new story that we still needed to learn to live? For the next 3 days I barely slept, but not out of fear. It was a vigil of presence and care. Michael began to move more naturally, to feel the physical world in a way that felt new, but at the same time familiar. His every gesture was measured, attentive, as if every muscle and every cell was learning to function anew. I cooked pancakes the next morning, and he sat at the table, watching with those eyes that had seen beyond but were still my son's eyes. "Mom, the smell, the food, it's real. It's good to feel it again," she said, and my heart almost exploded. The bureaucracy of terrestrial life has knocked on the door. We need to create a new certificate, justify disappearances, explain to neighbors and relatives. David handled it pragmatically, but I just wanted my son to be safe at home, breathing the same air I breathed. He laughed at simple things, commented on how small details had changed in the 15 years he had not lived here. I heard his stories about the other place, the lessons he learned, the secrets that no one could understand. But all that mattered was that he was with us. The room that had remained intact for so long now became the scene of conversations, laughter, smells of food and clean clothes. It was as if every corner breathed life again. "It's strange. Everything is familiar, but everything is different," he said, looking up at the ceiling. I smiled, feeling happiness and relief run through me. Michael was still my son, but a son who carried centuries of experience in 15 years of absence. And yet, in his embrace, I recognized every moment we had shared before the accident. Life had started pulsating again inside our house, and every sound, every gesture, was proof that miracles, even impossible ones, can happen. But I couldn't help but wonder, as I watched the window open to the morning sun, how far could this new beginning take us? And would he, after all, remain only my son? Or would something more of what he lived still accompany us? I sat on the bench on the porch, the same one where I spent years waiting for a sign, for the touch of a miracle that seemed impossible. The morning breeze poured in through the open window, carrying the smell of the flowers I had always planted in memory of my son. Michael was indoors, focused on writing his memoirs. Every word that came out of him seemed to reconnect past and present, life and rebirth. I took a deep breath, feeling the peace that had long eluded me, as I reflected on all that we had experienced. The years of silence and loneliness, the panic of the impossible connection, the despair of acting against time, and finally, the miracle that brought us back my son. I understood then that death is sometimes not the end. It just transforms into another form of love, an invisible bridge that remains between hearts, even when the body is no longer present. The most beautiful thing of all was not just having him back. It was realizing, silently and deeply, that he never left me, that our connection transcended any barrier the world might impose. Every tear shed, every prayer murmured in the years of pain, had been heard and reciprocated in a way I could never have imagined. Today, sitting here, I feel such gratitude that I can hardly find words. And if this piece of my story touches you in any way, connects with your own heart or memory, Leave your like as a hug that warms and supports this channel. Subscribe as someone who accepts the invitation to the next coffee. And share in the comments which city you are watching so that we can create a space of complicity and affection. Activate the bell so you don't lose it when the coffee is ironed again. Don't go away yet. Listen to the next true story that will appear on the screen. Always remember, each wrinkle tells a story, and each story carries a strength. Watch the next video here on the channel with another incredible story, and come be moved once again by the life that insists on surprising.